Mm.
We're closed for business until the end of the year. Hopefully, we could be open for Christmas, but no
No, no,
promise.
no. It's gonna be a lockdown Christmas. It's
Mm.
fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the problem is, what I try to understand is they announce like this death rate because of COVID, right? Daily, how many people actually die daily in whatever country. But what we are missing is actually also to know in the normal case, how many people actually die every day so that you can actually compare and benchmark whether the increase is really spiking up high or maybe
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah.
Because that's all relative, right? You just say, oh, in Indonesia, there 5,000 people died, and this month, yeah. But how many people actually die in a month, without COVID? So maybe 6,000. So I don't know. Yeah. So that's why it's all a little bit relative, I think. So
And what makes it difficult as well is that even so in Australia, every state looks after itself. So whatever the federal government wants to measure might be a little bit different at each particular state and how each state wants to measure. And then we're all trying to take different advice from whether it's the WHO, whether it's our own internal groups. And so it's not consistent. And that's what makes it difficult because there isn't that universal, yes, we're all measuring this and we're all measuring that. So that part's missing. And then the other part, I think, is just really capacity. Because I think again, reflecting on Melbourne, even though we might have a lot of people in particular areas of government, they don't necessarily, government sometimes is very inefficient, and that creates a lot of issues as well. So we might want to measure something good, but whether or not we can measure it well becomes a trickier proposition.
right, right. Well, anyway, it's Jaren, you're there. Jaren from Gen Singapore, uh,
Yes,
helping
hi,
us
I'm
with
there. I'm Jaren. Yeah.
yeah.
So just to let everyone know, we actually also live on YouTube in case some of the participants are unable to join us on Zoom. Yeah, and looking forward for the session. Go over to you, Ivan.
Okay, thank you, Jaren. So you'll be watching for the latecomers because it's 3:05 now. I think slowly we should start with our discussion. Asians are notorious for being late. Even if they work at home, they're still late going to the Zoom session. So yeah, I don't know for whatever reason. Yeah, maybe they cannot say traffic jam because I was at home all the time, but maybe jam with the door or something. So anyway, so for those who are here, welcome to our webinar. Um, uh, this very wonderful afternoon. This webinar is a cooperation between Gen Indonesia, Gen Singapore, and Gen Thailand together as we are celebrating the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020, this third week of November this year. Now, Gen, we're part of Gen community, is actually Global Entrepreneurship Network, stands for that. And we're a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. We exist in more than 170 countries now already. And every year during the third week of November, all entrepreneurs around the world join us together to celebrate all the entrepreneurial activities that we have been doing throughout the year by doing all kinds of possible activities like workshops, seminars, webinars, roundtables, even competitions in some countries, all happening around this week. And also, certainly, we are following that trend by having also a series of activities during this week that you can certainly also join. We take up lots of topics, from education to policies to social entrepreneurship to ecosystem support, you name them. Yeah. So, and without further ado, allow me to begin this webinar by showing a quick message from our Minister of Research and Technology, who is willing to basically say a few words to open the celebration of GEW this year. So it's just going to be a quick 3-minute message. So Jaren, if you could help us with the message from the minister so that we can all listen to that.
Sure. Give me a second, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Greetings to all entrepreneurs. Today, I would like to formally recognize the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020. It is a time to appreciate entrepreneurs in Indonesia and around the world who change our lives for the better. Entrepreneurship has been a source of countless ideas which were translated into products and services to enhance the quality of life and lead the economic growth. Our Global Entrepreneurship Index in 2019 ranked 75 out of 137 countries. It went up significantly from rank 94 in the previous year. It shows that Indonesia's entrepreneurial level has the potential to excel. Owning a business is certainly rewarding, but it is not without challenges, particularly during this pandemic. The government of Indonesia is committed to making it easier for all Indonesian business to grow by reducing costs and providing them with the support they need. One of which is by super tax deduction. We hope this policy could strengthen our entrepreneurial ecosystem. On behalf of the government of Indonesia, I invite all Indonesians to join me to celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week. Hopefully, this event would be an opportunity for all entrepreneurs to connect and initiate more collaborations in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaren. Thank you. That was the Mr. Bambang Brojonegoro, our Minister for Research and Technology, also the head of the National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. He's a very known person here in the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Indonesia because he was before a Minister of National Planning and Development. I think Ibu Vera knows him very well, and he's been involved with particularly social entrepreneurship issues quite intensively when he was in the his previous position. But now he's in charge for the research and technology. Of course, he's taking care of broader entrepreneurship related issues, except for education, because education will be under the Ministry of Education. Great. So today we have wonderful 4 panelists joining us in our discussion, panel discussion. We have a representative from Indonesia, from Thailand, from Australia, from Singapore. So all countries are represented here in the region. It's wonderful. So allow me to introduce them to all of you. So we have Ibu Veronica Kolondam from Indonesia. So she is the founder and the CEO of YCAP Foundation, a very prominent foundation. So I will let her introduce more what she does in just in a minute. So, and then we have Scott, Scott Coe from Melbourne, Australia. So he's the founder of Color Space, what it is. So we will find out in just a few seconds. And then we have, now this is challenging, Ada, your Thai last name is always, you have to be careful, otherwise you will bite your tongue. Karapai Sangko. Did I get it right? So Kun Ada basically is the easiest way to say it. She is actually the founder and also managing director of the Thai Young Philanthropists Network, but she's also a social entrepreneur in Thailand. And last but not least, we have Rust Noy. Is that Noy or New? New. Okay. Rust is from Singapore. He's the founder and CEO of Social Collider, which is an aggregator of resources for social enterprises. But I think Russ is also an investor at the same time. He's from Quest Venture. Anyway, so with that, so we shall begin our panel. I would like to ask each and every panelist to, say a few words about what he or she does, and also in regards of our topic today, particularly related to the pandemic issue, and also the future of venture philanthropists and social inclusion. So maybe we can begin with you, Ibu Veronica. You want to start?
Yes, thank you, Ivan. Thank you for the kind introduction. I think I'm very pleased to have all my ASEAN friends here, and also pleased to be part of GEN to some extent. Well, Ivan is the cause of everything, so just pull us together, social entrepreneurs into this entrepreneur network. So thank you for that. Okay, so in the next few minutes, we're probably going to just, before we actually deep down into the future of social inclusion and all that post-COVID, allow me to just share a little bit about YCAP. So you kind of get a context where I'm coming from, and then I will show the outlook of Indonesia, which is not good, in terms of poverty landscape during pandemic and what it actually means for social enterprise like us. So I'm going to just start by sharing screen. So I hope I'm already there. Sorry, it should be here. Oh, sorry, that's my family photos. Oh, yeah, okay, good. So, yeah. So I guess, wait, give me a second. I don't know, sometimes it's really delayed. Okay, great. So here's something about YCAP, which is the entire logo is actually telling everything that we do. With the vision for a thriving world where youth and mothers are empowered through love, hope, and opportunity, we want to liberate them from the generational poverty in a sustainable way. So we start with the open book, and to create a prosperous house, we do it with love. So those who actually understand Bahasa, YCAP actually stands for Yayasan. For why? The cinta, the word C is actually for cinta, anak bangsa. So it's actually loving the nation foundations, loving the nation's children foundation. So that's all about us. It's actually our driving force is to love the children of Indonesia. So that was my story in the beginning of time. That's a personal calling, and I was a young mother, so I wanted to also help the young mothers of those at the bottom of the pyramid. So that's pretty much who we are in terms of vision. And I just want to give you a big picture of where we are and the kind of impact that we have created over 21 years. Yes, it's a long time. 3.8 million people, mothers and child, and also where we are in the top 100 SPO, social purpose organization. We're pretty much number 32, which is not bad. And we have now mobilized about $1 trillion over 5 into programs, which exactly 2 that we do, the economic empowerment and education, which I'm going to show you in the next few slides, which just give you the clarity of how the vision actually translated into a mission and into the KPIs, into impact. So number 1, we believe in the power of microfinance to sustain lives, but we are using it only as tools, so that the children of those in the bottom of the pyramid can stay in school or go to school and reach their dreams. So we just use that as a tool. The ends is education for all. What we track is the income of the mothers that we serve. We see a triple income within the 1 or 2 years of intervention. And that means we actually brought them from $2 poverty, this is urban poor, $2 poverty income to about 5 to 6. So they're kind of in the safe zone. And that's the intervention for the mother. The impact number 2, we actually address the children. We believe without any higher education, they can go anywhere. They can be better. They can sustain that welfare that we have created through their mothers. So that's the only way to break the poverty cycles. And what we measure here is how our graduate, most of our graduate already outside of school system, so they drop out kids. We track them how they actually, whether they do better or not with the graduates from the equivalent level. And in terms of employability, they're not so bad. They're actually quite as competent as their fellows friends who are still in the school, in the mainstream school. And our education is not just giving them education, we want them to bring them from learning to earning. So 86% of our graduates get jobs. This is, of course, the pre-COVID number. We don't track it yet this year. And 1 in 5 of those in that 86% actually self-employed. So a lot of them really aspire to be a micro entrepreneurs. So that's probably just a nutshell about YCAP. And I guess probably before we talk about the future of social inclusion, allow me to take a little bit of COVID and what we are doing and how we are doing it, and what the COVID actually give me an insight as a social entrepreneur in the space of poverty alleviation. So COVID response. So these are what we have actually gathered. We've done all kinds of COVID response, from face masks, distributing PPEs, and we even have this electricity donation, which we call it Light Up campaign, where we give out electricity, donation for the electricity, point to point, so there's no physical movement. So we work with the PLN, which is the electricity company of Indonesia, to give them support. Because why? Because their kids are in school at home now. Imagine if they don't have the charging facility, they need to charge. We are looking at 30% dropout in our students, in our centers, but also nationally, simply because they don't have the smartphone facility. So if you want to move anything online, you need to have the device first. After the device, you need the internet quota. After that, you need the charging. So at least we bring electricity. We keep them able to just continue life at home as it is. So it's been like a 4 or 5 months programs, and we closed it last month on the Light Up, and then we're moving into what we call a COVID more not only relief but resilience. So this is probably, before that, we're gonna see, this is the number of poor people from, since our Suharto era down to SBY, then Jokowi's. We actually have done almost an extent of 20 some years of poverty reduction, from 50 million down to 9.7, I think, million, which is around 9.7%, which is around, I think, 17 million, or no, so 28 million, say 28 million poor people. That's 9.7%, so under 10% under Jokowi's. But you want to see what the COVID has actually brought. This is at best scenario. Our finance minister actually predicted 4.5 million job loss. That means 4.5 million people will come back to poverty. So you times that 5, that's 20 million people. So that's probably another, media has been quoting between 20-30 million job loss. That means affecting the 30 million population. But here's the latest that I heard from the Minister of SMEs. They're quoting as far as 70 million. So when you look at this, the work of 20 years erased within 6 months. That's it. So we are not going back to where we were. We're actually worse than where we were in 1998. So that's a lot for us to do as a social entrepreneurs. And that's why we're actually moving towards rebuilding and resilience program. As for COVID, we all know that COVID is really bad, but answering Ivan, yes, it is still net surplus in terms of population globally this year, even with so many deaths that COVID brings. But there's a Chinese proverb saying that there's always opportunity in every danger. So in this COVID, what we learn actually as organization on the education front, we've been talking about going online, but we never actually took it seriously. We never actually took the time to really look into that. But now, since the school is closed, we can't participate anymore in the physical sort of like schooling and vocational studies. We move everything online, and we did it. We did it by May. We were all online, and in some cases, we actually did gamification. Wow, that's quite an accelerating, I think, growth and innovation. It just, COVID forced us into that. And there's a gratefulness in that department, not the taking lives part, but COVID gives us the priority what needs to be done. And then that's just great. And we are instilling STEM education and also coding. We've been talking about it, but we actually didn't really pay attention. But in COVID, we're able to do that. That's on the education side. On the economic empowerment side, of course, we're talking about digitalization. We talk about restructuring our own way of doing business, the business processes and all that. But we never actually found time because it's not forced into that. Now with the condition, the situation, we kind of have to have more time, and as we relax, sort of like all this financial inclusion program, we call it harmonization. Indonesia always have a word for everything. In that, we mean restructuring of loan, extending the period of installment, and relaxing the repayment. So that is for our beneficiaries, but for the company, we're also dealing with our own, refurbishing as of the system and going digital and all of that. So I guess there's a good side to the COVID, to the business. Although, like everybody else in the world, we are not doing well as a company. As the foundation, we're quite good. Actually, we're looking at a lot more funds being raised philanthropically in response to COVID. But as for business, not so good. But this is where life just goes on. We need to, continue to innovate. And I want to give you 2 examples, which I won't take more than 2 minutes of your time, giving back to Ivan after this. So this is what we actually found out that we should be doing. We're talking about future now. We're studying now that we set up 2 funds. Funds number 1, we work with HSBC on the women micro entrepreneurs to receive not only business starter package, because a lot of our mothers that we have been serving have to restart their business, or they need to pivot their business, right? So we work with HSBC on that, so that's great. And we also empower farmers to actually help them and make sure that their harvest won't fail, because this is their livelihood. So that's the first fund. This is about $1 million there. And on the IWF, this is a new initiative that we just launched with, on IWF, I have another slide, with Moonshot, this in partnership with Moonshot and Investing in Asia, Australian DFAT. So what is interesting about this fund is a $10 million fund with a window of, like any ventures fund, is about 10 years with 8%, I think, a return per annum. We actually have a 20% loss facility, guaranteed facility by DFAT. This is what just been launched a couple months ago at the AVPN annual event. And we are actually at this point fundraising for the 80% of the fund, and then we were going to help social entrepreneurs. Yes, this is my last point, which is we need to empower, enable social entrepreneurs in the region, in our case in Indonesia, to help accelerate growth post-COVID or during COVID. We don't know when it's going to end. So this is what I guess we have that ability to connect people, to connect investors and investees. But at the same time, we need to train all these social entrepreneurs to be more investable as well, because that's the biggest obstacle for investment, not because they don't do good work. They all do great work. It's just that they just don't do it well in terms of business. So investability is always a big key. So that's all from me. Back to you, Ivan. You're muted, Ivan.
Thank you. Thank you. The picture looks so grim. But anyway, well, that's the situation apparently here in Indonesia. So thank you for the detailed presentation. By the way, Ibu Vera has been known as a prominent social entrepreneur here in Indonesia. She has received numerous awards from the UN. Also, she was adopted as the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, I think in 2012, I think. She wrote several books. So she's someone here. And I think she's been trying to do also a lot of great work. But as she said, there's no matter how much you try to do, there's still a lot of work to do. It will never finish, right? Okay, so next maybe I'll move to Russ. Russ Noy from Singapore. So
yes. Sure. Hello, hi everyone.
Brief intro about what you do.
Right, cool. So very quickly, I think it's really most impressive what Veronica does. I'm so impressed, and if there's opportunity, would love to meet in person one day, right? And yeah, and then find out the amazing stuff, right? So likewise, probably I'll just share, but I'll just do a very quick, maybe 3 minutes of what I do, and then and of course, you know, I always believe that we are powered by purpose, and I can sense so more than passion, I think it's purpose, right? The purpose that we want to do, and why we do what we do. So I wear a few hats, and the first is Social Collider, which is an impact organization or social enterprise. And this was in Jakarta when I conducted a workshop for the youth social entrepreneurs in 2018, right? And so very quickly, I was at the Singapore Ministry of Education, right? And for 10 years. And then after that was sent to Laos to do government training. And thereupon joined Flex, which is one of the world's largest contract manufacturer, and was doing global inclusion strategy, right? And one of my proudest achievements was to set up a policy to hire people with disabilities. So from less than 10, when I joined, they had about 400 when I left. And this was in the Zhuhai campus, right, in China. Did my master's, my MBA at Tsinghua University in Beijing, and spent a couple of months at MIT. And then in 2018, founded Social Collider, and recently appointed a visiting professor under UNDP program, so carrying out the social entrepreneurship movement across Southeast Asia. Right? But of course, there are fantastic folks like Veronica already, and I'm learning from all of us. So currently lecturing or conducting workshops at in the Philippines. Right? So very quickly, what is Social Collider, right? So aggregator of resources for impact organizations. And how do we do that? We have two arms to the business. The first is a space. So right now we have 4 co-working spaces, and we have an academy to teach this social entrepreneurship, because I think there's a growing movement, and COVID has probably flagged out that businesses should not just be about profit making, right? There should be a social and or environment angle. So these are our 4 spaces, and today I'm at the hub for inclusive hiring. Right. So very quickly, some of our community folks, right, and then our academy. I'm sorry, yeah. So why this vision for impact organizations? If you look at it, during my time at Tsinghua in Beijing, okay, I was introduced to this charity called Chiheng Foundation, right? This dark blue color, and it's a charity. So at the time, so what Chiheng does is it helps children impacted by AIDS in China, HIV. But why, right? So in the mid-90s, a lot of pharmaceuticals went to China to buy blood. So huge demand, huge supply, but not enough hospitals to do the proper transaction. And the reuse of syringes and whatever could go wrong went wrong. And that was how the whole AIDS spread. So when the founder came to Tsinghua to give a talk, he was sharing that during the financial crisis years, he could not raise enough money, right? He could not raise, and so I told him, well, why not let's have a business angle so that the charity could be more sustainable, right? So my thesis was to help him, and I remember I shadowed him. I went with him to the villages, and I thought I had seen poor, but this was another level of poverty, right? So, and a lot of people were thinking, wow, China, right? You look at Beijing, Shanghai, but no, this was, probably very inland, right? And so the huge realization that give a fish, feed a day, teach to fish, feed for life. But feeding for life is not enough for people to get out of poverty, right? The villagers could feed themselves, the villagers could survive, but they just did not have enough money to get out of poverty, right? They have a small piece of land, and if they have more than 1 child, right? Let's say 3 children, 1 boy, 2 girls. Well, no need to guess who got to go to school, right? The boy. Then the girls would either get married early or they will have to work, right? So because of that, that's when Social Collider, our vision, we hope to aggregate, we hope to be the marketplace for people to sell the fish, right? So that's in a nutshell. So when people ask me, what do we do? I say, I sell fish, right? So impact-wise, because we are a small company, very young, I'm 2 years old. So definitely, I'm so impressed with what YCAP does, right? 20 years, 21 years, right? So currently 33, and then we have only spun out about 50K of business for the enterprises, and about 7,000 people have visited us and understand what we do, right? So yeah, these are some of our partners. So hope to collaborate more with us in time to come. And that's it in a nutshell. So I'm mindful of time, so I will leave it to the next speaker. All right, thank you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Russ. Let's move to Ada in Thailand. So Ada.
Hi from Bangkok. So for me, I'm running Thai Young Philanthropist Network, which this year we are 12 years old. So we pretty much on the supporter side, we provide financial support to emerging social entrepreneurs in Thailand, and also for some other time, also other in-kind support like mentorship, market matching, and all those stuff. But usually we do this, we are working with our partner, Cheng Fusion, who is running a few incubation program for social entrepreneur in Thailand. And beside that, on TYPN side, so we actually support at least on the financial support side to the social enterprise ecosystem in Thailand. One is on the philanthropy, like purely giving grant. So this one, we actually do it through thejai.com, the social enterprise I'm running now. So it's a crowdfunding platform that collect donation from a big crowd from the public and to support different projects, some from social enterprise, some from non-profit, and some are initiative from like active citizen in the country. And we also have impact investing side as well. So we on impact investing, we have impact investing circle where some of our TYPM member, the Thai Young Philanthropist Network, who are very interested in doing more like venture philanthropy. So we actually put in money together and form a fund, and using this fund to invest in early, actually more like growth stage social enterprise. And we also have so Cheng Fusion, we work with Cheng Fusion, and they have a Cheng Venture Fund that are social startup venture fund. So for those who want to put in even more money to support social enterprise, then they will do it via Cheng Venture Fund. But for the during the COVID, so let me give a bigger picture of what happened in Thailand in social enterprise ecosystem before COVID. So the social enterprises that are doing very well in the countries are those who are in tourism, agriculture, and sustainable fashion. And those are the people or enterprises that are most affected during COVID, right? Like tourism, pretty much they can't do anything at all, or even now. And some of agriculture, they can continue the production, but on the sales side, the market side, because many markets have to be closed at least for 1 or 2 months during the lockdown. So there is a lot of kind of like disruption not in a good way to all these enterprise that they are like heading up to become like a big enterprise, and then COVID kind of slowed them down quite a lot. Actually, at the onset, we even expected that like social enterprise in our portfolio and also in the ecosystem at large would like a lot of them might not survive during the first 5 months of COVID, because all these enterprise have pretty much the same problem on the cash flow front. But they are actually much more resilient than we thought. So somehow everyone managed to survive, but most of them downsize or even transform themselves from doing one thing, and they might try something else during the COVID. So for the past 6 to 7 months, on the both philanthropy side, we actually mostly spend philanthropic money on COVID response. So we support like 500 hospital nationwide with all the necessary equipment like PPE, N95 mask, negative pressure room, depends on what the site is, the hospital. And we bought kind of like medical COVID insurance for 3,000 medical staff nationwide too, and support like 50,000 vulnerable household, mostly with the food supply, and some we actually do an experimentation of like offer temporary employment to 100 like families that are affected, like just to test out the model, like instead of giving them food, really like just give them money with some condition that might fit them better. And so right now is things pretty much back to normal in Thailand. So we are on the investment side. We are still kind of like waiting for all the enterprise to kind of like they are still in the transitioning themselves, changing their business model and all. So we will wait until all these things kind of like settle, and then decide more like how we can invest money or even giving philanthropic fund to some of the enterprise that might fit with the need of Thai society in the coming year. And talking about that, so we see kind of like, at least in terms of societal need, there are some of the urgent or emerging issues that come from COVID that we might not be that interested before. For one is mental health. It used to be important issue, but it's not in our priority list. But we think that like next year onward, it will be it will be one of the biggest problem we have or challenge we have in Thailand. So if we have so the social enterprise that are working on this issue, we might invest in them more or keep on supporting them. Another one is anything that create jobs. So before this, we actually support many education projects. So right now, I actually learned a lot from Veronica presentation. So we want to invest in something or like support something that not only giving people learning opportunity or educational opportunity, but that should lead into something that can provide them with income in the near futures. And also on that front, we also like maybe like 2 months ago, we actually want to focus on reskilling people because a lot of people are already unemployed. So we want to support like any social enterprise that are doing reskilling job. But right now, the officials start to issue like data on unemployment and also on like labor market outlook. And we think that even we reskill like a bit lower educated population, right, to some other industry, those industry are not hiring next year anyway. So right now we shift our focus a bit more on the micro enterprising. So instead of training them to do another job and hire by some other industry that might not work at least for next year. So we might support something that more entrepreneurial, online sale, or even like starting something on their own, and then we give them seed money. So that's something on our plate now, and that's how the Thai social enterprise ecosystem look like at the moment.
Thank you, Ada. You have a lot on your plate. Anyway, so before we go back to you again, so Scott, why don't you share a little bit about what you do and
yeah, absolutely. Likewise, I will share screens with everyone. And whilst that's happening, can I just say how, I guess, incredibly humbled I am to be in everyone's company and presence here, because it's just so inspiring to hear what everyone's been doing. And I almost feel a little bit odd sharing some of my stories, because I feel like, so for me, I'm bringing a slightly different perspective to the conversation today. And it's one as a founder of a relatively young social enterprise. And so firstly, can everyone see my screen okay? Is that all good? Yep, okay. So, I feel like I said, what I'd like to do is quite quickly sort of share some of the experiences that I've had running a social enterprise and some of the challenges. And I think it really touches into some of the things that everyone's sort of spoken of before. So a little bit about who I am. So I actually used to be a management consultant. I did a lot of work for government, for public sector, and I got to a point where I really wanted to go out and make a bit of an impact. And so, Ross, like what you were mentioning before, nowadays there's so much stuff which is around purpose and finding purpose. And this became something that was really important to me. And as a matter of fact, very recently, I've just published a white paper, which is exploring what we mean by purpose. There's a lot of businesses now that's thinking about what does it mean to be a purpose-driven organization. And so I'd love to invite everyone to check it out. I'll give you a link at the end, but this is something that is quite passionate to me, because for me, I moved away from that corporate world into wanting to do something a little bit more. And so for me, what I did was I started a platform called Color Space. And what we do is we help organizations, so businesses, hospitals, all these areas where people come together, and we transform these spaces into galleries. And the reason we do that is not just to bring art in, but we want to connect people. We want to improve mental health. Ada, as you mentioned, mental health and well-being is an important issue. And what we wanted to do was humanize these places for people to be able to connect with. And at the same time, what we would do is then create opportunities for local emerging artists to be able to share their art through our platform. And so we created what is sort of like a bit of an Airbnb for art type of a situation, where we wanted to be able to pay artists to be able to get their works out and create different ways for culture and community connection to happen. And so that's fundamentally what we do. We change the artwork around, we change things around, and really the big vision is to be able to transform cities around the world into galleries. And we're actually doing some work in Thailand at the moment as well. And we're trying to see if there's ways that we can take this model and apply it over there, apply it in Europe, and just find different ways. And part of this is about creating different types of opportunities. And I think this is one of those challenges where with something like art, sometimes I know that there can be perception that art is seen as recreation, but as Russ pointed out, as we're moving towards what is our purpose and people are really thinking about what it is that we do, we speak of what it means to support the creative world, right? And what, for some people, this is the only thing that they can do. And I can't speak for different countries, but in Australia, it definitely is quite hard for artists to be able to share their stories. And many of them, I mean, we did our research as well in terms of connecting with our communities, and a good third of them create art to support mental health. Quite a lot of them need these opportunities, or 70% need opportunities to preserve culture, to tell stories and be able to connect with each other. So that was the idea, right? So that's what it is that I wanted to do and wanted to be able to connect and build through. And so what I thought I'd do in the next couple of slides is really just try and share quite personally some of the reflections that I've had growing a social enterprise in and of itself. Separate to that, I am connected in other, I guess, social enterprise communities and networks, and I'd love to be able to help where I can in different areas, but I just thought I'd present this particular perspective for today's session. The very first challenge, and this is one I think that Veronica and Ada, both of you have spoken to already, which is, as a social enterprise, the biggest challenge is really not necessarily one of the impact side, but one of the solving customer problems in really meaningful ways. And I say that because for me, my perception and my view of social enterprise is one that it's a type of business that can solve a customer problem in a way that allows us to solve a social problem. And where our big challenge is finding all of those things together. And really, when I think about my entire experience, the problem that we had wasn't about saying, you know, can we identify the artists to help? Can we identify the communities to help? It's getting customers to really understand what we're trying to do and to be able to open their wallets in a sustainable way in order to help us. So that, for me, was probably the biggest challenge. And so when we go out and talk to other, sort of call it the intermediary support or other supporters that can try and help with social enterprise, that's where sometimes there was a bit of a disconnect, is because we thought, for example, that we needed money, whereas actually we didn't really need money. We just needed better skills. We needed better understandings of how to ask questions meaningfully and to be able to do it with two sides. Again, the customer problem as well as the social problem. We didn't want to just solve this and not realize what it was that we were doing for communities that we wanted to support. Speaking about the communities that we wanted to support, the second challenge was then about genuinely demonstrating and quantifying impact. Now, Ivan, you shared that in some of the research done to date, that one of the biggest challenges for social enterprises is really how to quantify the impact, because there can be numbers that say, you know, we've solved, 50,000, well, we've impacted, say, 50,000 people, or for Color Space, we've raised more than $50,000 to $60,000 for all the artists that we've worked with, and we've directed it to other art areas as well, where we've tried to bring that into communities too. But a lot of our impact is also in areas of mental health, in areas of well-being and community cohesion. And those are things that are very hard to demonstrate, right? I mean, there can be different metrics, but this is where it becomes tricky, because sometimes having these conversations as a social enterprise, especially talking to investors, especially talking to impact investors, it can be difficult to say, well, how am I able to quantify what it is that we do? And that's just something that we have to be mindful of. And as well as being a social enterprise, we don't have a huge amount of resources. So to commit more resources into trying to figure out the quantification can sometimes take away from us just doing what it is that we can try to actually do. So that's the second major challenge. The third one is talking about the investment and the support. So finding worthwhile investments. So here, I really do need to say that I can only speak of this from the Australian perspective. So in Australia, our investment community is generally quite risk adverse. So forgetting social enterprise, even just regular startups, there's very little seed. And I think there's also very little Series A type of funding as well. But again, I think the biggest reflection for me has been that I don't think we actually needed a lot of money to begin with, but it was, again, that genuine support. And as part of that type of investment funding and support, it was also the types of expectations that came with it as well, because sometimes talking to investors, we always kind of got the feeling that we were talking to people who expected us to be big tech startups. So it's kind of like, well, we're not going to be a unicorn. We just can't be a unicorn. But where's the expectation in that? And from an investment perspective, what type of returns are genuinely meaningful? And so that was always a difficult conversation, which leads us into challenge number 4 for us, which is managing expectations. Again, from a commercial side, sometimes the biggest challenge was being able to say to investors, well, what kind of returns are you expecting? Because if you're expecting market returns and you're expecting the impact, then it makes it difficult for us to be able to achieve that. But again, in Australia, there can also be an expectation from the community too, which is sometimes people think of social enterprises as pure charities. So are we allowed to make money? Sometimes people say no. And it becomes difficult because then it's not really sustainable. We either have to go in terms of, well, how do we structure our business and structure our impact, but not get everybody offside. And sometimes it can feel like a bit of a minefield in terms of trying to articulate what that impact is and how we can do it well. And the final challenge is one that's looking forward into the future, which is the post-COVID question, which is it's going to take time, right, in order for social enterprises to succeed. And also because of the way that our business structures and models are set up, where we are making sacrifices in terms of things like profit margins because we want to direct it to an area of good. That means the growth is going to be slower and it's going to be longer, and we may not succeed. And that's another challenge area, just a realistic challenge area. Startups fail at what, like 90%? Social enterprises, I don't know what that number is, and I suspect it is quite high as well. So what does that look like? Do we have an environment where, we can support social entrepreneurs and recognize that quite a lot of them probably won't succeed? And what does that look like? And what type of investment return does that mean we can actually make? So that's more how we're thinking in the future, because we need that type of time in order to be able to pivot, to scale, to make sure that, like, I can't, for example, abandon the communities of artists that I support, right? Because it's important for me to continue to do that. So we don't have that quick pivot that sometimes just a regular tech startup might be able to afford. So those are the challenges. I hope that's been useful or insightful. But again, I'm really privileged to have had this conversation with everyone. I just wanted to leave you on a quick slide here, which is if anybody is interested in this research around what purpose means, what it means to be a purpose-driven organization, if you check out my website, there will be a link. I've only just published it. And this is one in which, again, I talk to people around the world to try and understand the richness of what that definition is, and what some of those challenges are. So again, so grateful to be here and looking forward to staying connected with this entire network. Thank you. Back to you, Ivan.
Thanks a lot, Scott. So you're doing certainly a marvelous thing there. But as we all know that the pandemic has affected the whole world now. And Veronica has stated, for example, in Indonesia, that the level of poverty has increased dramatically. And actually, it has thrown us back to, level of maybe 20, 30 years ago. But anyway, it doesn't mean that we should actually stop doing what we're doing. Now, what I'm interested is now to hear from all of you, basically, what is it that you are going to do differently now, considering that actually COVID-19 has created a lot of certainly problems, poverty, job losses. Yeah, but on the other hand, as it was also stated, when one door closes, other door opens. Yeah, so there are other opportunities, especially for those who wish to actually create some impact in the society. Of course, Scott, as you said, I've never heard any social enterprise that is becoming a unicorn. Yeah, unlike, for example, tech startups, right? So in terms of the valuation, I think social enterprises will never become a unicorn anyway. So, but that's put it aside. But maybe we can start with you, Russ. I mean, because you are also has another arm of investing in social enterprises. Is there anything different that you're going to do, basically, yeah, to minimize the impact of the COVID-19? I know, for example, maybe in Singapore, you don't have that much of poverty compared to Indonesia or maybe Thailand. Yeah, so, but you have certainly different issues. So, Russ, what do you think?
Yes, absolutely. So before I jump to that very quickly, right, we don't have, yeah, you're right to say that social enterprises don't work, you can ask 10 out of 10 social entrepreneurs, nobody will tell you, we set up a social enterprise because we want to be the next Amazon or Uber or whatever, yeah, nobody will tell you that. It's always because, I've encountered this. So experiences shape actions, right? And purpose is, of course, the other angle that we're looking at. So coming back, I think this whole COVID has flagged out the weakness, and we are only as strong as our weakest link. And I think COVID has flagged this out. So in Singapore, our weakest links, I guess, on the migrant workers. So currently we have about 57,000 people infected with COVID. I mean, of course, a lot have recovered. I think 95 or even up to 99% have recovered, right? And our fatality rate, our death rate is less than 30, right? So 57,000 and 30. So if you look at it, then I think the percentage point is 0.0006, very, very small number. In fact, they are almost negligible, right? So what does this tell us? I think, yes, weakest link, maybe the elderly and the migrant workers. So moving forward, I think some of the key areas that we can definitely move forward is, number one, the living conditions of the migrant workers. Number two, healthcare. I think we always need to invest in healthcare. And this is not, excellent healthcare. So I've got a friend who unfortunately contracted COVID, and fortunately he recovered. So he was telling me when he was at the hospital, there was nothing, he was not given any medication at all. He was just resting and in a clean environment, in his own room, right? It's not even a room, he was at a car park that they converted to a makeshift space, right? And I think this is just something that we need to highlight, right? You don't need amazing medical facilities, because COVID is just it's a flu, right? It's typical flu, you just get well, right? And I think people need to realize that. And even at home, you can, of course, with the proper medical procedures, you can get well at home, right? So moving forward, I think this is one of the key things that we should start to pay attention, right? It's not rocket science, and it's not fantastic. We're not finding a cure for cancer. Of course, that'd be great, but we're not, right? So I think there needs to be a shift of course, being mindful of what we do, right? Whether it's social distancing, and whether you wash your hands or use hand sanitizers or put on masks wherever we go. So these are some of the key things that I feel we should be looking at, and we should be also looking into post-COVID, or even now, and of course post-COVID, right? So so again, mindful of time. I think there's a lot more that we can jump into, but probably I'll leave it here, and then I'll hear from the rest of the panel as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Russ.
No, at all.
Scott, back to you. What would you do differently now?
What would I do differently? I think what COVID has allowed us to do is really slow down and actually think a little bit more. So, for example, I reflect that prior to COVID, everything had become, again, in the context of Australia, everything had become so quick and so transactional. It was, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? That type of a situation. And so what I'm actually optimistic about is that being able to have these types of conversations, to be able to connect with people at that, that purpose level. And what I actually think we are now doing better is having those types of conversations. I don't know about anyone else. For me, I am feeling a greater willingness by the people that I connect with to care about some of these things, that there's people willing to say, yes, we will support businesses that also do good, that it's not just the bottom dollar situation anymore. And I think that was a really good circuit breaker for us. And the big question, of course, becomes whether or not that will persist down the track. But I think that in terms of what we're doing differently, it is to, like I said, to slow down, but also to really solve really, really meaningful problems and really connect with people in ways that are relevant. And I know that from me, because we're looking at it from an art perspective and there's different vectors and we're not directly tackling, say, a homelessness situation, that it is a little bit different, but it is the same sort of situation insofar as, you know, if we're going to go forward sustainably, we do need to understand all of those vectors and be able to have those types of conversations where, you know, I often say to the social enterprise people that I work with, we need to understand both the people who can support us sustainably and commercially, as well as our community. If we sort of just talk about impact, sometimes that's not quite enough because people have to also understand why they're trying to support too. But now I'm finding that people are willing to listen more and to give us that opportunity. So that, I think, for me is the most important part of it and what I am quietly optimistic about.
Thank you, Scott. Ada, you certainly have a lot of things to do there in Thailand.
Yes. So what do you do differently? So this year we focus mainly on, at least in terms of allocating resources, mostly to COVID response. So next year is all about like rebuilding the future, right? So that's where we will put the money in. And this year is we only do philanthropic funding. So next year we are going to do more of the impact investing as well, investing in social enterprise that we think Thailand need them. In order to fill in the gap. Second one is we also have a shift in the industry focus. This one I mentioned earlier too, that we would like, identify the lever point that we will kind of like, put more resources in. And one thing that I want to do more next year as well is on community resilience, because this time we learned that, you know, even COVID is gone, there could be another pandemic, like things could happen anytime, and the country can survive better if we kind of like spreading out the growth and resilience into like community and rural area and stuff. So that would be something that we never focused before, but we will do more next year. And last one, we will do less of the project funding and more on the really venture philanthropy. But after we kind of like re-evaluate everything and then see what enterprise or what organization we should put more like we should invest in, so that they can be important impact drive for our society. So that's all for me.
Thanks, Ada. Vera.
Yeah. What we will do differently, I think we have to do better and bigger, because there's greater needs out there. And what do you mean by better? In our translation to our work is the digitalization part. Just to give you an example, in 21 years, we did the face-to-face training and educating 3.8 million kids, right? But in 3 years, we did that with Facebook, and we reached 56 million. So that's another dimension that was been overlooked. And I think we want to go really big into that. On that note, I know Kun Ada and also Scott, you talk about mental health, mention the word mental health. Now that word is just keep coming back to me, and since a few months ago. And this is one of the work that we actually do. We invested in a platform like a young women, we call it Rahasia Gadis. It's actually Girl Secret. It's literally translated as Girl Secret. It's kind of cute. With 3 million following, and this is a nation of pain. So everybody's dealing with mental issues there. I mean, we're talking about relational, we're talking about girlfriend, boyfriend issues, we're talking about moms and teachers and all of that. But 70% of them actually understand, they know that they need an intervention, psychological intervention, counseling intervention, and they are at the verge of depression. And it's crazy. 25% actually admitted to have actually thought at least once to kill themselves, to do suicide. So this is actually at the very, I think COVID, yes, the indirect impact of COVID is actually, of course, the economy, definitely number one, it's seen, but what is not seen, this unseen illness, is the mental. I mean, we're dealing with, yes, young people, but of course, people at home. I mean, to be trapped at home for like 7-8 months or more, another year to go, it's crazy. But that's why I think we're offering now a online counseling. So we just launched a website so that we can attend to them individually. We're talking about tens, thousands of questions every day. So that's what I think we should do. We have to reach out. I mean, COVID brings that realization. We cannot do a physical thing. So technology enabled us to go bigger and actually cheaper. With technology, the cost per head is way cheaper than before. It's like, what, 1 per 100th, or even, of our costs before, when we actually went to school and then educate people. But then this is accessibility is actually a little bit open. I think a lot more open. So that's what we will do better. Ivan, I think bigger and better. Where of course we all social entrepreneurs, we share that optimism. But I guess the funds approach, we need to have fun, creating funds that help people, and that's where we are going. We found ourselves actually in that juncture. I mean, I share earlier about the 2 funds, but we have actually one coming up to specifically target social enterprise, because social enterprise are just creative people. They're innovative, right? They're helping people with their own money, pretty much, and that's what. Just to address to you, yes, we don't have a social enterprise which is turned into unicorn at this point, but we are unicorns in impact. How many of, there are one social enterprise can reach out to like 100 million or 200 million people, and then that's a unicorn in impact. And I think that's actually more meaningful, I think, not in investment, but there's an investment, I think heavenly investment in my language. So yeah, I guess that, but of course we need to think about how to mobilize serious money, serious kind of money. And I guess the founder of Global Impact Investing, Sir Richard Cohen, he's actually trying to move towards impact transparency. Impact transparency means the measurement and also the accounting of impact. It's amazing stuff that he's doing, and I actually encourage you guys to go to, he's working with Harvard on this, so they call it impact-weighted accounting. You just type up that name and you will see all the studies coming up, and this is how to move serious money into impact. I mean, Scott, you said something about we need to support businesses that already do good and do it better and well. So this is how to move money, but we need to also help social enterprise not only raise the money or to be investable, but also to measure that impact like seriously. So we have that transparency. With that transparency comes sustainability. Yeah, back to you.
Thank you, Bufetta. Now, this is certainly interesting, because in my over 10 years of experience, especially in the entrepreneurship world, when I get to meet with students, especially at the universities, those who are actually interested in social entrepreneurship is far less compared to those interested in commercial entrepreneurship. Yeah, because I think simply because, they're more into this, tech stuff, and then they see all this big shot guys, role models, yeah, and become very wealthy and so forth. That should be like the dream kind of, goal that they want to reach. Whereas for social enterprise, social entrepreneurship is always seen as something that is tough to do, challenging, yeah, because of the impact, and it's also tough to get money, investment, yeah. Now, because of COVID-19, there are also a lot of existing social enterprises, of course, not big foundations like what maybe you do, but the smaller one, they can barely survive because, even without COVID, it's already tough for them to survive, let alone thrive. Now, because of this COVID, of course, there's much work for them to do, but less money, of course. Yeah, because people are not giving out anymore, or maybe less. So a lot of them actually falter. What would you say to that? Especially those who are thinking about wanting to actually create a dent in the society and an impact, but it is really like something that is promising, rather than, oh, you're doing a good work, you're buying your ticket to heaven, later on, because as Ibu Vera said, it's a heavenly investment. So, but of course, you're going to be struggling while you're doing this. So,
Yep.
what would you say to that? Maybe Russ.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in first because I got to swing out in about 6 minutes time. So I'll just quick summary. So if you look at social entrepreneurship model, right, of course, every country has its own model. And for us particularly, I'll just use the four commonly used ones, I think, throughout the world. The first is plowback, right? Plowback meaning minimally 30% of the profits go back to a cause that you believe in, right? Whether it's from the underserved community. Underserved here can mean people with disabilities, single parent or single mothers, the youth at risk, ex-offenders, people who've gone to jail before, right? And elderly and so on, right? So, and environment and or the animals. So first, plowback. Second is provision of employment, right? And in Singapore, a more famous case example is this place called 18 Chef. And what 18 Chef does is a restaurant that hires ex-offenders, people who have gone to jail before, right? So, and again, it's about 30%. So minimally in the textbook. So it cannot be like McDonald's. So in Singapore, McDonald's hires about 4,000 people, of whom I think about 100 are people with disabilities, right? But yet they are not considered a social enterprise because you need to have about 30%. And why 30? Again, there are a lot of interesting things, maybe another time. Right? And then the third angle is provision of a service to the underserved. So maybe elderly homes in Singapore. So in Singapore, we do have old folks home or elderly home, right? A daycare, and these are very expensive. The top tier one, a month, they can cost about 6,000 Singapore dollars, right? And then of course, special schools, right? For special education, children with autism or low intellect ability. These can also be considered social enterprises because they provide a service to the underserved, right? So and then of course the third model, and then the fourth model is the one that is where the products are responsibly and sustainably sourced, right, from the whole supply chain angle. So these are just the four common models. There are many others, right? But yeah, so if you see that, then I think for a social enterprise, I think you can go in tangent, right? Meaning to say, if let's say the business is about plowback, right, profits. So you can just gun your business, just go all the way out and just get as much of business as you can. And then the profits that you make, 30% you channel back, right? So I think, yeah, so probably that's one angle. Then the other one is through hiring, right? So for example, at Social Collider, I have one staff who is blind and one staff who is deaf, right? And it's, so when I grow, so in any, businesses, if let's say they grow, okay, then of course they will hire more of this, right? More of the people with disabilities, of the underserved. So these are some ways that we can look at it. And finally, of course, I always tell people that if they cannot sustain, okay, then probably the business model is a little bit wrong, right, or not right. And either they fine tune or they become a charity. I mean, from that angle, right? Because we are social, but we are also an enterprise. There needs to be a business angle to it, right? So if the business angle is not sustainable, then probably just go along the way of a charity, right? So just from my point of view, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Russ. I know you have to leave in about 5 minutes or so. But before you leave, allow me to also ask you one more thing. Listening, yeah, back to you, Russ, actually. Listening to all what our friends are doing here, Scott, Ada, and Veronica, what would you tell them? I mean, in terms of maybe tips or advice, or even critics, maybe, or even challenges. So you can start with.
Yeah, I should be the one learning from Veronica.
We will learn from each other, actually.
Yeah, I think amazing stuff, right? But to me, it's really just carry on with your passion, but also maybe I think a place like maybe where you have a huge population probably is easier to make an impact, right? And then I think because your solutions are very, I would think, like, I mean, I use my China example. So I was based in China for 3 years and on social entrepreneurship, my research, and then thereupon I taught at the university for a short while. And in China, there's always this resistance, right, in terms of what is a social enterprise? Right. So in terms of that, I think that's something that is not very good because there's no awareness. Right. So, but having said that, the solutions are probably very broad-based, and the solutions that maybe in Singapore is more refined, right? Refined meaning to say, like, for example, the social enterprises within Singapore, they are already targeting they're providing specific angles to maybe mental well-being, to the elderly, right? Whereas when I was in China, I thought that it was maybe just, like, for example, using the example of the old folks home or the elderly home, they would just have a home there, but they didn't really look into the mental well-being. For them is, do you have a safe place? You know, there are 3 meals, right? But here we look into the very specific well-being using music therapy, using other kinds of angles. So coming back, I think as the society progresses, as society moves from a less developed to a more developed one, right? Then I think potentially your solutions will change as well. And of course, this is to ride the wave and to foresee in a way to look at how we can potentially carve our solution so that maybe there's just a rhinoceros, right? I don't want to use unicorn because unicorns are not real, right? So I want to use a real creature, maybe like a giraffe, right? Anyway, to sidetrack, in the past, giraffe were thought to be unicorns, right? In China, yeah, because of the way it looks. Anyway, so coming back, why not be? So I think it is possible, and there are successful cases around the world where very successful, like Grameen Bank, right? If you know, right, Grameen Bank, or even the Ashoka Foundation. Potentially, these are some of the more commonly known names in the social entrepreneurship space, right? And yeah, so coming back, then I think probably rather than solutions, right, is to look at just to do a horizontal scan on what the future may be, right? Yeah, and of course I'm really keen to explore and to visit everyone if of course pending COVID situation, and to find out more. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you, Russ.
No.
When talking about resilience, of course I always use not unicorn for sure, not giraffe, but cockroaches. We have to be like cockroaches, because cockroaches will survive even a nuclear bomb. They will not die. Yeah. So they say when all the humankind is eradicated from the world, the cockroaches will survive. Yeah. So that's how resilient they are. Anyway.
Is it okay if Russ, before you go, as I was listening to you, there were 2 things that really came to mind and this is born from, like I said, the research that I've been doing at the moment. Firstly, young people, millennials, Gen Z, I believe, something like 76% of them are now much more interested in working for businesses that have a purpose alignment to what it is that they want to do. So I feel like for younger people, there is a stronger desire now to think about doing well and doing good. So I think that's really, really powerful. I also think that what you're talking about with the social enterprise and the models, I think is really interesting, because one of the big concepts that everyone I spoke to shared back to me was the concept of enough. So as the founders or as business people, we could grow a business in which we can keep making money, but how much is really enough, right? And what do you do when you hit enough? Because with that extra amount, that's where the 30% the plowback. In Australia, there's 50% profit. There's all these different models. It almost doesn't really matter, but it's thinking about what is enough rather than saying I want more. And that's not to say that the business can't grow. It can grow, but it's thinking about our relationship with that. And that leads me to that last point, which is often when I speak to other social enterprises as well, I like to suggest to them that they think of themselves as enterprise socials, right? So think about the enterprise component, because again, in terms of what we can do forward and what these social enterprises that are falling down or are struggling, there is still problems to solve. There is still people who are willing to pay money for services. And it's just saying, how do we find those things? And then when we do find those things that we can service, what's enough for us to do that we can support ourselves? But then that's where we can take that extra bit and help different communities, whether that is, as you said, through employment, whether that is through plowback into different areas. All of those options, they're all there, but it does need that extra bit of thinking and that consciousness with our relationship with who we are, our lifestyles, and what we can do for other people.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Amazing. Yeah.
So you think that social entrepreneurs are very critical for us to actually recover from the effect of the pandemic then? Is that right, Scott?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the last bit?
Yeah, so you think that the social entrepreneurs are critical factors for us to recover basically from the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic?
100%, because we are, we've seen what the systems are like when it is just, a purely corporate scenario. And we see that happening now. I mean, we can look at like businesses in, say, America, for example, and again, the capitalist type systems, and I'm not ragging against capitalist systems, but you can see that sort of separation of how it can, really suck sort of wealth towards one area and not towards another. So I really do think that the more we look at businesses and we look at even businesses like large businesses such as Unilever or Danone, so these two are really big companies, but they also have done, they've done what they can, and they've done their best to become either sustainability minded, or Danone became B Corp last year, I believe. So it's possible for this to happen, but it needs the leaders at the top to have that desire to want to change. And if they can have the courage to make that change, then they can bring people on the journey. So there's quite a few other people that I spoke to kind of did not want to give current executive leaders the pass when they sort of say, oh, well, they have to report to shareholders and everything. They're just like, well, actually, they could be more courageous, look at the long term and say, you know what, we're going to bring everyone on the journey, because it's not about short-term profits, because that's often what we think about in terms of the shareholder returns. It's short-term profits, but we can talk about the long-term profits, and that can still work too. So there is a path for both, again, enterprise and social to be able to merge together. And yeah, I definitely think that the social entrepreneurs, and then maybe the next generation or the generation after, that will create that wave, but we can at least start to pave the way and make some of the mistakes that we can then tell the younger people don't make these mistakes.
Thanks, Scott. So before we end this conversation, I would like to give the final comments to the two ladies. So Kunada, what would you say to my similar questions, how critical social entrepreneurs are for us to recover from this pandemic effect?
Okay, so at least in Thailand, the pandemic actually opened up a lot of gaps and flaws in the government system. Like, not that they are not effective or anything, but there are many different things, especially anything that need immediate action, that they would not be able to mobilize support soon enough to respond to all those stuff. The first respond to all the need from the hospital or medical professionals were served by citizen sector, social entrepreneurs, social enterprise, or citizen. So we already know that those gaps exist. So we need, so citizen we can mobilize when there is a emergency issue, right? But we need third sector organization or some institution that fill in all those gaps, and social enterprise could be one of those organizations to serve all these unmet needs. So that's for sure. And if there is anything I can give advice or tips to anyone who want to do social enterprise, or even to myself, is whatever you do, you try to find your champion, the first few people who will support you, will champion you, will talk good thing about you. Because if you try to get everyone on board, it's impossible. So you need someone, a small group of people who understand you and will support you, and then you will grow. And every single initiative, social enterprise, network, organization always happen that way too, from what I see. So good luck, everyone. A lot of things to be done next year.
Thank you, Janeda. Thank you. Final word, Veronica.
Yeah, I guess supporting the social entrepreneurs or social enterprise is the only way for sustainability. And I think what I get from Scott in terms of policy and then leaders, there should be a seriousness, urgency in supporting social enterprise. And that's what I said earlier about impact accounting. Now, measurement that is actually a measurement of impact that is actually placed as an audit report annually. Imagine that, so that you can get like a taxation rate based on the impact that you created. One of the example in the study, well, we all know Nestle trying to do better in terms of impact. And they have actually been part of the ESG investment company. So that's all good. But in the study, they found out that Nestle is actually emitting carbon 5% on their EBITDA. That means 1.6 billion. So whatever tax Nestle is paying, this is suggested by Sir Ronald Cohen, you have to add 1.6 billion to that, because you are actually emitting carbon while producing. So your product impact is not there, even though as a company, your investment is actually graded ESG, but not necessarily in terms of your product impact. So we have to look closely, each company, how they actually produce their products or service, I don't know, that emitting carbon. So that has to be put into calculation to their taxation. That's just the whole premise of impact accounting. On the other side, enterprises, they have an intentionality to create impact, right? And I think this year, because of COVID too, we have more time to think about how we actually do our thing, address our programs, how we do our business. So we went green. We went on the no plastic journey. We went on this whole careful thinking of emitting carbon even in doing good. So if we have that sense of consciousness and awareness, right, as an social enterprise, you're already doing good, so you should have a surplus tax. So whatever tax that you have, in Indonesia, we still pay tax. Maybe not in other countries. Non-profit pay tax in Indonesia, corporate tax on the surplus. So that's welcome to Indonesia. So in Indonesia case, instead of we pay the corporate tax upon our surplus, our impact has to be monetized in terms of tax deduction. But yes, of course, it's a long way there. The conversation just started last year. So this definitely will start in Europe, and they will look into the Fortune 500 companies, how they are actually ESG investment grade, but they're not exactly, their product impact is not necessarily a plus to that investment grade. So that's the whole big picture in how actually going forward, how to support social enterprise. Of course, somewhere along the way, we have to help them. Before the policy is done, we have to help them with some sort of a resilience, COVID resilience. We're doing that too for social enterprise. That's just surviving, but to thrive, in the world where social enterprise is actually respected in the ways that we should be, put us in par with, other Fortune 500, even though we're not that big in terms of a dollar, but we are big in terms of impact. So yeah, it's actually needed, that will of the government and regulations and all of that into impact accounting. So back to you, Ivan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Vera. So I think that's very valid and important points that we need to also take into our notes. But that would leave us for further discussions in the future. More interesting discussions are coming up. But once again, thank you for sharing all your thoughts and ideas and opinions. I think this is really great session. Even for me, I've learned a lot, also from you, Bu Vera. So thank you for being here. And with that, I would like to close this panel. So maybe Jaren, I think half of the participants have left, but for those who are here, maybe we can still take a picture together.
Yeah, sure.
So for those who are interested to put their face on, so turn on their camera.
Yay.
Got it? Maybe they're on their pajamas, so they don't want to really show.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much. So I hope we will meet again virtually or in person in the future for a more great sessions. So thank you very much. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Bu Vera. Thank you, Ada. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
See you
Scott,
next time.
Kun Ada, Ivan, and I think
you.
Ross has gone, and everybody else there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate meeting all of you. Looking forward to connect. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.